Hello, all you hotsy-totsy people, and welcome to Historically Drinking Live, the Halloween edition. This month, every Friday in the month of October, I'm going to feature a haunted place and a drink to go with it. Ooh. And I'll dress in a different costume every week. I'm sure you can tell I'm a flapper this week, inspired by this week's episode. So to all of you who are watching after the live taping, thank you so much for joining in. I appreciate you very much. So the month of spirits, the first week. What are we covering? We're covering Musso and Frank's Grill and their famous gin martini. Okay. I'm trying to get this live feed going so I can respond to your comments. I'm sure it'll start in a moment. There's always it's always a little bit behind on my computer through my phone. I think it's the spirits messing with me. Ooh. All right, so the Musso and Frank Grill Martini. Let's get right into it, shall we? We need a mixing glass and something to mix with. Now I've got this fancy bartender official mixing glass and a fancy bartender mixing spoon. It's a scary mixing spoon. I got these from Cocktail Kingdom. If you want some fancy bar tools, that's the place to go, in my opinion. But you can also just use whatever you have on hand. You don't have to have fancy tools to make this drink right. Hi, Jennifer and Chris. Oh my gosh, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much for watching again. Oh, and Jeff, hello. Thank you for watching as well. I'm making a drink. All right, so into our mixing glass, we are going to put 2.5 ounces of Gilby's gin. The reason that I'm using Gilby's gin is because this is the gin that is the house gin at Musso and Frank, and it has been the house gin for decades now. All right, there we go. So Gilby's is a London dry style gin, which means that it's juniper forward. Now what does that mean? So juniper is that Christmassy, that Christmas tree flavor that some people love in their gin and some people don't like so much. There are plenty of gins out there that are not so dominant in the juniper that might appeal to you if you don't like it. But the Gilby's really is pretty nice if you do like that juniper-y style. This is similar really to like Beefeater or Tanqueray. Okay, so now I'm going to put some ice in the glass. Now this martini, I'm making it according to the Musso and Frank's recipe. It's not exactly a classic martini because it only has gin. A classic martini would also have vermouth. But we're featuring Musso and Frank, so we're going to do it their way. I promise that in some future episode, I will definitely feature the martini because it has a very interesting history from its beginnings in the mid to late 1800s until where it is now. It was like over there, and now it's over there. Very, very interesting story. All right, so I'm stirring it just enough to cool it down and also to add a little bit of water to it. The water will both bring out the aromatics, such as the juniper, and make the alcohol. It will make the alcohol not as intense. Okay, so I had this glass chilling with ice. It's very important for a martini that you put it into a cold glass. You always want to do this with a cocktail, but in the case of this drink in particular, it is super important. You don't want to pour it into a warm glass and accidentally warm up your spirit at all. There, look at that sexy alcohol pouring out of there. Okay, it's a little short in my glass, but that's the fault of my glass. The glasses that they use at Musso and Frank are actually little, very small martini glasses that fit this 2.5 ounce recipe perfectly. It ends up being about 3 ounces after you stir it with the ice and add some water to it. What they do, though, to compensate for the fact that so many people now are used to gigantic martinis, which are kind of gross because they're warm by the time you get to the bottom, is they give you basically another martini in what they call a sidecar, which is a glass, it's sort of like this. They put another martini in a glass like this and put it in like a bowl that's filled with crushed ice. And they set it in front of you with your martini glass. And then when your original martini is gone, you fill it up with what's in the sidecar. So you have a huge martini, but it doesn't get cold, or it doesn't get warm by the time you get to the bottom. It's a pretty brilliant idea. Okay. So the other, besides the gin, the other important ingredient in this martini is, of course, these olives. These are Spanish olives that are stuffed with pimentos. This is what Musso and Frank uses. They make their own olives. They brine them in-house. They buy Spanish olives and brine them at their place. I bought olives that were already brined. But they are Spanish olives. Pimentos. What are pimentos? Pimentos are peppers. They're sweet peppers. So just little thin slices of the sweet peppers are stuffed into the olives. It's a classic thing. All right. I'm going to put this in the drink. And let's try it. That is really delicious. I understand that I say this every single time, but it's true. This is really fantastic. And let's try one of the olives, huh? I love these olives. They're super fresh. They're super crispy. Really delicious. All right, so this drink is a winner. Cheers. Happy Halloween. So, if you go to Musso and Frank, you will get this exact martini. If you're lucky, it will be made for you by the legendary Manny Aguirre. He has been a bartender, the bartender, at Musso and Frank for decades. The man is now in his 80s. He's been bartending, he's been working in restaurants since I think the 50s is when I read that he immigrated here, and has been bartending since not long after that. This guy has seen so many stars. He has so many bartending stories. I have actually not yet been to Musso and Frank, but I would really love to go and just sit across from this guy and pick his brain, get his advice on being a bartender, and hear some of his stories. I bet he's really amazing. So the history of Musso and Frank. They first opened on Hollywood Boulevard in 1919. It was under a different name at that time, but it quickly changed to Musso and Frank. In 1927, it was bought out by different people. since 1927, it has been owned and operated by the same family for almost 100 years now. Generations of the same family operating Musso and Frank. This is a super, super classy old Hollywood joint. It is all wood and dark leather and white tablecloths. The waiters, the bartenders, they all wear red jackets with black lapels. It is so classy. It was, and it still is. They really believe in tradition at this spot. Hi, Rafi. Thanks for watching. I miss you. And Jennifer. Jennifer says, just gin and olives, not my kind of drink. You know, there's a drink for everybody, right? All right, so in 1934, a year after Prohibition, the Musso and Frank opened a back room, which became known as Algonquin West. The reason it became known as Algonquin West was because of all of the notable authors who hung out there. There was a bookstore next door to Musso and Frank in Hollywood, and this bookstore was a hangout for a lot of these authors. So the bookstore would close, and then they would go over to Musso and Frank to have a drink or maybe something to eat. The famous ones were ushered into this back room. There were so many of them that the nickname caught on, Algonquin West. Some of the same people that hung out at the Algonquin Round Table in New York actually hung out there. Dorothy Parker, when she lived in LA, frequented Musso and Frank and hung out in this room. So did Hemingway and Fitzgerald, so many famous authors. And it wasn't just famous authors in the back room, it was also famous like movie stars that hung out there. There was a doorman, not outside of the restaurant, outside of just this room to make sure that only the famous people were getting in. But it wasn't just the back room where famous people hung out. The restaurant was known for the stars that hung out in it. Hi, Nick. Thank you for watching. Good to see you. All right, so the new room. It was eventually closed. It was not owned by the restaurant. It was owned by another property. They wanted it back sometime in the 50s or 60s, so it was closed. But Musso and Frank took the bar itself and all the furnishings and moved it into another part of the restaurant, which they called the new room. So Algonquin West became the new room in Musso and Frank's. It still exists. Same bar, same furnishings. Musso and Frank's currently is closed due to COVID. They were open for a little while to do takeouts, you know, typical COVID stuff. But they decided that it wasn't going the way they wanted it to, and they were in the middle of a remodel of their restaurant anyway, so they just decided to close down and focus on their remodel. So they will be finishing that soon. They were remodeling some of their private dining areas specifically. So they're going to be opening those up, not just for private dining, but to spread out the tables in their dining room. So there will be plenty of room for seating when they open up. So I can't wait for that to happen. Musso and Frank is, as I mentioned, a celebrity, or was a celebrity hotspot, and it still is. And part of the reason is that they don't allow any press. In fact, paparazzi is discouraged from being on the street in front of the restaurant. And it's interesting, from in front of the restaurant, you wouldn't really know how cool it is inside. It really looks like just like a Hollywood diner from the outside. Then you go inside and it's super spiffy. Bill, hi man, thank you for watching. I am sure that you know all about Musso and Frank. It seems like a place that you would fit right into. So in addition to there being no press at Musso and Frank, It is also known that the guests there are very discreet. From the tourists to the locals like me, it is known that when you go in there, you don't pester the famous people that are there, and you are still very likely to run into famous people. Hi Jair, thank you for watching. So now, what we've all been waiting for, the hauntings of Musso and Frank. There are many. Hollywood itself is a very haunted place. Musso and Frank is no exception. Some of the very famous people that have been seen there are Errol Flynn, Lionel Barrymore, Carole Lombard, and Jean Harlow. A super, super famous haunt who is often seen at his favorite booth, which was booth number 1 in what's known as the Old Room, is Charlie Chaplin. That booth is the most popular table in the restaurant, as you might imagine. It is well known that Charlie Chaplin haunts it, and I guess people want to hang out with him. Makes sense. Other haunts that aren't famous people is there's a headless woman that is seen by one of the grill counters. There's also a little girl in a blue dress. Now, as I mentioned, Hollywood is a super haunted place in general. The building that Musso and Frank shares a wall with is a theater. That theater is located on the same property that apparently a school was located on back in the days of old Hollywood. The school apparently burnt to the ground, and it burnt to the ground with children in it. So those children may be haunting not just the theater, but maybe the little girl in the blue dress is one of the kids from that school. I would certainly want to hang out at Musso and Frank's and see all the famous people if I were a little girl. Another famous story of haunting from Musso and Frank is that there was an investigator that came into the restaurant and said that there are a bunch of ghosts that are confused because they wanted to go to the Algonquin West room, but it's not right anymore because the bar isn't there anymore, and they can't find the room where the bar is. So there's some ghosts who have made the transition to the new room where the bar is, and there's some ghosts that are just bumbling around trying to find it, which seems like the biggest tragedy of all to me, that after I die, in my afterlife, I can't, I'm stuck here, first of all, but second of all, I can't even make it to my favorite bar. My favorite bar is not where it's supposed to be anymore. They've up and moved it, and I don't know where it is. That sounds absolutely awful. So these poor ghosts that are searching for the bar. There's another famous ghost, and I think that maybe something that he said during his lifetime sums up the reason that all of these ghosts are still hanging out around Musso and Frank. So that was Orson Welles, and what he said was that hanging out at Musso and Frank was like being in the womb. I guess I'd like to be there too. Well, that's it. That is the first episode of Historically Drinking's Month of Spirits. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, you can tip me on Venmo at saralm-mengoni. 10% of this episode's tips will be going to Know Us Without You, which is an LA charity that is benefiting back of the house restaurant workers who are undocumented, who are laid off, which means that they're not getting any assistance from the government. So it's helping to feed those people. And it is my experience working many years in restaurants in big cities, that many of the people working both back of house and even front of house do not have papers. So I think it's important to help those people out through this time. All right, a couple shout outs I'd like to make. A book that I found really useful in researching this month of episodes is Gourmet Ghosts. You can find the link in the information from this episode. It's all about, the one that I was reading is Gourmet Ghosts LA, and it's all about haunted restaurants and bars in LA. And then there's also a podcast that I would like to shout out called Holly Weird. Tammy and Bryce do a really nice job about talking about hauntings around Los Angeles. It has been fascinating. I've been listening to it for the past few weeks while I'm doing this research. So thanks, Tammy and Bryce, for putting Holly Weird together. I listened to it on Apple Podcasts. I think that's it. Oh, I have a job. It's temporary through the end of the year, but I am working in Huntington Beach at Pacific Hideaway in the Shorebreak Hotel. I am there every Saturday and Sunday bartending. Other days, randomly during the week, I'm running the bar program there for a short while. So if you're in the area, please stop by and see me. I'd love it. One more thing. My friend Felicia is making these amazing masks. Becca Loves Felicia is her name on Instagram. Becca Love is the name of the company. I'll put a link in the comments for y'all if you want to check them out. They're really nice. Clip on the nose. They fit really well. There's a pocket for a filter. Awesome. Great job, Felicia. All right. That's it. Thanks for watching. Y'all are awesome. I'll hopefully see you next time. Same time, same place, same spooky. Ooh.